Welcome to True House Stories. I am Lenny Fontana, coming out of New York City. And normally I take my camera and my microphone and scour the earth looking for the best. I didn't have to go that far. He is a New Yorker at heart, okay? He was born and bred in Brooklyn, and he did amazing, amazing things with his career. And he's still going strong, and he's even producing and writing today. He's been a fan of the show. He's been watching the show. He's worked with some of the people that we've actually had as well in the past on True House Stories. Those that know that cover, I know he's going to be like, oh, I hate this cover, but we'll talk about that cover in a minute. You know who it is. I'm happy to announce today, finally got him here. The one and only Man Parrish.
You think you had problems last week? Just wait till this show happens.
Man Parrish, he says he don't like the record. He caused the scene, but we're not going to go into that yet. Everybody had that cover. Anyway,
hey, Paisan, how you doing? I'm from
Man Parrish, first of all, is ethnically Italian, born and bred in Brooklyn. So he's your typical stereotype, which he shed that whole linguine thing. He Cugino from 86th Street. He shed it all that long time ago.
Yep. Real pizza.
Lenny's Pizza, Spumoni Gardens.
Pizza. Yep. All that. Yeah. Spumoni Gardens. You ain't been to Brooklyn unless you went to Spumoni Gardens
or JV on 18th and 65th or 60th. Was it 60s? I can't remember. I forget so long. Anyway, thank you, Man Parrish. I've been going back for months trying to get him. Do you mind?
Not because of me. I've been around.
That's me.
I am a diva, but not about that.
Then he went on vacation. My mistake. I all of a sudden I woke up and says, I want Man Parrish. And he goes, Lenny, I can't. I'm on my way to the airport. I'm like, we'll do it on today's date, which is great. Thank you again for agreeing to do it. Man, before I start, have you ever been asked, what is your real name?
Oh, yeah. It's all Manuel Parrish, but it changed to Man Parrish from Andy Warhol, the famous artist who did the Campbell soup cans and all that. You don't know who Andy Warhol is, well, you probably should, but you can Google. Major influence in modern art. One of the guys that worked with him took my photo in the late 70s, and Andy Warhol had Interview magazine, and said, we're going to put you in like What's Happening Downtown. I said, okay, all right, cool. So I was doing a bunch of like local bands and art bands and producing stuff even way back then before computers and sequencers and all the digital audio, reel-to-reel tape. And he called me, he said, the photos came in, let's go up to Interview magazine and we'll decide which one we're going to use in the article. I said, great. And we went up there and we're standing there and Andy Warhol comes in and says, what's going on? And I was like, oh, Andy Warhol, which later on turned into a whole big other thing. But he said, this is Manny Parrish. And he goes, Manny Parrish? He goes, that sounds too common. Manuel. It's not Emmanuel, it's Manuel, but that's a Latin, Italian, Spanish, Mediterranean name. And he said, you should we're going to call you Man Parrish because there was a photographer called Man Ray. And he was quite well known. I'm like, I don't give a damn as long as you put my face in the newspaper. I'm like 19 years old. Like, yeah, call me Man Parrish. So a couple of months later, we were someplace and this guy introduced me as Man Parrish. And I was like, ooh, no, that's weird. No. What are they going to say? Hey, man, that's weird. When everybody else was John or Joe or Lenny or whatever, I'm this weirdo man.
Well, actually,
I'm the weirdo man.
Yeah, you're actually Emmanuel in real life.
Not with an E, just an M. Manuel.
Without
the E.
Manuel. Uh-huh.
But that's like nails on the blackboard because I hate when people go, hey, Manuel. It's like. So it's Manny to friends, but Man Parrish for the music stuff because it stands out,
The other question is, before I even get to everybody, and this just happened this morning when other DJs ringing me saying,
how many inches am I?
No, Lenny, wait. They asked me this question. They said, when I saw Man Parrish's picture, I thought he was black.
Boy, was that a big one. So when we were doing, well, it was hip hop in those days, which turned into freestyle and then electro. Same stuff. We could talk about the origins and how it went to hip hop, but everybody thought I was black, right? Because it was basically urban, the fever in the Bronx. It was 92 KTU, and we could talk about that because I did all those vocoder 92 KTU that used to hear on KTU for 10, 15 years. That was me.
Wait. 92 KT.
Yeah, that was me.
You?
Yeah, that was me. Carlos De Jesus was the program director, and we tried to figure out a way to get our stuff on the radio more. And it came up with the idea, what if I use the vocoder and I give them call station that Carlos De Jesus, 92 KTU classics, it'll give them a unique sound. And I was the first, now I'm taking credit with it, I was the first person ever to do robot call letters for radio station. Now it's everywhere around the world, but we did that for KTU, which went out to 7 million listeners at the time or something like that. And in exchange, like a form of payola, Carl Seixas would put anything that we played on the radio, as long as it didn't have dirty words in it, he would put it into heavy rotation. So hip hop, bebop, boogie and Bronx, man-made. I did Two Sisters. We got Two Sisters. I did IRT, Watch Your Closing Doors, COD in the Bottle. These are all things that I did. I worked on the Alicia records. All that stuff got top airplay because I was giving them free stuff. And then the record company would call Kiss FM and go, well, Man Parrish is on the top #1 of their play charts. Who? I'm like, oh, you guys are behind. You get with it. You know what I mean? And they'd go to Billboard, they'd look it up and go, oh my God, we're missing out on this record. And then we would call BLS and go, hey, BLS, Man Parrish is #1 and you guys are. So everybody thought I was black. There was a radio station in LA, the biggest urban radio station in LA. Stevie Wonder, I think, was part owner. When they found out I was white and gay, strictly dickly, as we call it in the business, when they found out I was gay, they threw me off of there. And BLS threw me off. It was only DJ Red Alert that would play my stuff on BLS. But I got reverse discrimination, which was weird. You know what I mean? But it didn't bother me. I remember we played a place in Trenton, New Jersey, and we didn't do a sound check. We just showed up, and I had a show where I had this cape over my head, and the lights would come on low, and all the smoke would come down over the stage, and we had this creature, and it would come out and pull my head up. And I had David Bowie glam glitter makeup on, and then they would finish it off with glitter. So I looked like the gayest fag robot in the world, right? I was sparkling, and I was the only white dude in the place. And they were going, oh, 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 oh. And I thought, oh my God, I'm going to get killed, right? And then the first beat dropped, and then everybody, started partying. So there was a lot of that too. There was a lot of, who's this guy? Man Parrish is playing. Oh my God, it's this gay white dude that looks like David Bowie or Boy George with glitter and makeup and all that kind of stuff.
More like Ziggy.
And the background guys had graffiti jackets and skirts, and they would twirl, and the skirts would fan out. And this is a fucking hip hop club. Sorry for the F-bomb, but this was a hip hop club, with stuff going on, and we're. But it was great. It was pretty cool. So yeah, to this day, somebody looked at one of my YouTube videos and wrote me to this day, for the last 40 years, I thought you were a black dude and you're a white dude, even cooler. And I wrote back, thanks.
You were before any of the Justin Biebers or any, as far as a commercial act that was doing black music.
It wasn't black. It was.
You know what I mean?
It was urban.
The urban.
Now urban is black, right? Because of rap. But back then it was Latin. Like, there were groups like Freeze doing A-E-A-E-I-O-U something, and there was Alicia. There was white, black, and Latin all mixed into one. And to let everybody, all these people know, hip hop, bebop, the word is hip hopping is jazz for dancing, and bebopping is music. So hip hop, bebop, don't stop is dance to the music, don't stop. That's what the title is about. So it was just hip hop back then was club dance music. Rap was very starting to happen, Rapper's Delight and all that kind of stuff, but it was not rap that happened today. You know, it kind of morphed later into it because you had hybrid groups that were doing dance rap with heavy rhyme on it. You know, we did Boogie Down Bronx, which had rhyme on it, but I put a vocoder behind it, which made it not so hard. I took the edge off of it because I didn't want it to be marginalized. I wanted to have a wider appeal. But yeah, I'm a white fag.
Okay. How does music find you? This is, I ask everybody the same question.
Oh boy, let's see.
Young kid, as a young
yeah. So we didn't have music in the house. There was one of those little transistor 9-volt radios, and my mother listened to talk radio, 1010 Winds, or my father did in the car. So there wasn't a lot of music. My father was a terrible, terrible piano player. Papa, daisy, papa, daisy, give me. You have to learn these songs. They're classics. So he sent me to a piano teacher. And to this day, I can't read or write music, right? It's all done. I've done 200 people orchestras and choir. It's all done by ear. So if you tell me, take the song and play it in F sharp, I know where an F sharp is, but I don't know which black and white notes after that. So after my third piano lesson, she hit me across the knuckles with a ruler. And I'm going to say some F-bombs. I called her a fucking ugly cunt and that she should go to hell. And I was maybe 8 years old. And that started my music career. I never took piano lessons after that, obviously. But I got interested in music. I think I found a record player in the garbage. And I went out to Corvette's, a department store. I went into the music section. And they had, I don't know who was what. And I found Grand Funk Railroad double live album. And the only reason I bought it is because you can get 2 records for the price of 1. And I went home and I put it on and I was thrilled that I could actually, get 2 records for the price of 1. And I wasn't really into it. Then I discovered things like Parliament, Funkadelic, started watching Don Kirshner's rock concert. I was a huge David Bowie fan. I can't smoke pot now because I get paranoid. I don't drink, so I don't get high. But back in those days, me and my friend Kenny used to go to the, it was then called the Academy of Music, which became the Palladium. And we would buy, at 12, 13 years old, we would buy acid and drop like the window pane acid that Jimi Hendrix did. And we'd see groups like Papa John Creech and Quicksilver Messenger Service, like, who's that? But we didn't care because we could drop acid and trip at the disco ball, you know what I mean? I remember going home one day and I thought a fluorescent light was following me home. And then I went to the subway and everybody turned into zombies. And when I got home, my mother said, "Did you get drunk tonight?" And I went, "Yeah, I'm tripping my brains out." "Yeah, I did." And she goes, "You better get inside before your father sees me." And I'm lying in my bed, tripping my brains out. You know what I mean? So music was, I got into music like that. And then I got my first, there's a series of events which we could talk about, but I wound up leaving home and building my first synthesizer. And I was still smoking weed. That's when you would get an ounce of weed for $30, right? And then a nickel bag was this much in a Ziploc baggie and stuff like that. So I lived in a bong. I made synthesizer sounds. And it had black lights and those little lights where the heat comes up and the thing turns around and projects things all over the walls. And the neighbors avoided me because, they smelled weed and they heard synthesizer through an echoplex, in an echo machine. So I started doing, it's ambient music now, but it was, back then I called them soundscapes because I didn't read or write music. So I couldn't make songs and I was too embarrassed to get involved with a band. Because they say, "All right, everybody, play in D sharp this song." I couldn't do it. I never joined the band. So for years, I did ambient music. Would be ambient music now. So that's how I got into it, and my synthesizer collection built and built and built. I remember one day I wanted an ARP 2400 and it was $2,500. I was living away from home and I only called my parents when I needed money. And I said to my mother, I want an ARP 2400 synthesizer. It's the newest thing out. This is all before MIDI. This is all just analog old school gear. And she said, how much is it? And I said, it's like $2,500. She says, I'm not giving you $2,500. I said, Ma, if you don't give me the money, I'm going to become a male prostitute and sell drugs. So call me back. She said, let me speak to your father. And 5 minutes later, she calls me back and goes, or meet us down at the, Sam Ash Music Store. We'll buy you a 2,500. So I was a pretty ruthless little shady, what, to get what I did. But I got it and built more music out of that.
So what's crazy is that you do everything by musically ear.
Yeah, but because of that, I met so many people in New York for music. That's how I started producing, because I had a Moog synthesizer. I had an ARP 2600. I had a couple of synthesizer modules, and everybody's, go to Manny's house. He's got a multi-track tape recorder. He can record your band. So everybody came to my place. You know what I mean? That's how I started producing records.
See, I knew there was a little bit of behind the scenes. I was trying to figure out where this all begins. So let's talk about some of the bands that stepped your way. There must be one or two that.
Boy George, Michael Jackson, Gloria Gaynor, Roberta Flack, Crystal Waters. In Europe, Visage, Bronski Beat. I had a group called Man to Man. I'm missing out 100. I have to look at my bio.
That's fine.
A lot.
That's the who's who of the music industry at that time. The who's who.
Yeah, I guess. Yeah, but see, I tell this a lot. New York City was a small town, so before dance music, we used to go to Max's Kansas City and CBGB's because you were either into rock and roll, jazz, or classical. There was no other choice before disco started. So we hung out at Max's Kansas City, which was on 14th, 15th, 16th. I think it's 16th and 17th, or 17th and 18th on the east side of Park Avenue. And we would see Bruce Springsteen got booed off the stage for doing an acoustic set. Aerosmith used to come in their van and then stand outside trying to pick up girls. We saw Devo when they were nobody, the Ramones. Debbie Harry used to get up from behind the bar and play in Blondie, and they get back behind the bar. And these were just, talking heads. I mean, I can go Joan Jett and the Runaways. They were like local bands. The Cars used to drive down from Boston. So we used to just see these people. So I was interested in music, didn't know how to make it. I went to high school performing arts because I was going to be an actor. And that's the place where they did Fame, the movie Fame. And I got thrown out about 4 months into it, the same day as Freddie Prinze. Freddie Prinze used to run down the hallway, open the door, and would shout something foul out of your mother's "See you next Tuesday," and then shut the door, and everybody would crack up. So the school had to get rid of him. But while they got rid of him, they were going to get rid of me too, because I was talking back to the teachers, and I would repeat the "See you next Tuesday" jokes and all that. And if you don't know what "See you next Tuesday" is, take the 4 letters and you'll figure it out. So one day, somebody from the principal's office comes up and Man Parrish, you come on down to the principal's office. I thought, oh boy, what happened now? It was one of those principal's office where they had the divider with the frosted windows, and the principal was in the cubicle within the office, and she's screaming at somebody. And I thought, oh my God! Door opens, Freddie Prinze, and walks out. You get in there! And I went, oh my God. You ain't nothing but shit. You're wasting time, valuable space. You're a loser. You're never going to be anything in this world. And I said, you know what? You fat, ugly dyke. Everybody knows you're eating Mrs. Shine's, Pussy, on the 4th floor. You can go yourself. And she went ballistic. And I walked out and slammed the door, and the girls in the office were laughing. Got downstairs, walked out, and Freddie Prinze was sitting on the steps smoking a cigarette. He goes, oh, you too? And I said, yeah. He goes, don't worry, dude. We're going to be somebody, and all these idiots back here are going to be nobody. And, he was more of a somebody than I was. Actually, Freddie Prinze Jr. sometimes contacts me on Facebook, because I was with his dad in school and stuff like that. And I was working at the Metropolitan Opera House at the same time as an extra on stage at night carrying spears for $10. So when I'm sure a lot of people here don't go to the opera, but if you ever see a picture of an opera, there's a crowd, and the non-singing crowd is called extras, extranumeraries. I think the literal name, but extras. Yeah, you're a villager, you're an army guy, a non-singing role. And I was ninth grade, whatever year that was, like 13, 14 years old. And one day, this guy comes in and goes, I got organic mescaline. Wouldn't it be great if we all dropped acid and went on stage? And of course, we go, yeah, that's a great idea. So we all drop acid. And about 45 minutes later, we're standing backstage, ready to go on stage, and the acid hits everybody. And we're in a processional march with orange grease paint on, and we're walking through, I think it was Aida, we're walking through the sand, and there's horses pulling a chariot in front of them, and I was the first or second behind the horse, and we get on stage, and that's the old days with the 1,000-watt light bulbs, and I'm going, oh, I'm in the desert, I'm tripping, look at the beautiful colors and the music, and I could feel the warm sand as we're walking in between our toes. When we got off stage, the horses took a crap and everybody walked through horse shit on stage, tripping around. No, don't go upstairs, come over here. And they put out buckets and we had to dip our feet in the buckets and we're tripping our brains out. So I had a very colorful childhood, and that's only the beginning of it.
It sounds colorful, but it's a good story, though.
Man Parrish stories on YouTube. I have 40 of them there, and that's only the beginning. Hopefully, it'll be a Netflix series, and I got a great idea for a series. But those are true stories that I did. I had a very rough life at home. My mother, well, in those days, mental health wasn't a big deal, right? I mean, it was a big deal, but not like it is today.
Oh, no. We talk about it all the time. They slap.
Yeah. I mean, it was like
slap you in the hand. Go, you're all right.
I mean, I'm totally fine with it.
Right?
But it was like, it wasn't a mental health issue. You were the crazy family, you know. Oh, that's the crazy family on the block. And my mother was, well, we called it quirky in those days. It was mental illness, and that turned into schizophrenia. So it got very bad for me. And I've been in therapy, and it really helped because I kind of realized through my mother's illness, she wanted me to be perfect. And you're from an Italian, Jewish, any one of those families, your firstborn is important. And I was adopted. So my mother wanted me to be perfect. And I think with the mental illness, it amplified that. And she became obsessed with me being perfect. So it turned into, some of your old school people know Sybil, right? If you know, Sybil's mother was mentally ill and really tortured her. I was tied to the radiator and she tried to turn up the steam. My mother would take extension cords and turn it to a cat of nine tails and try to whip me. Oh, bad. She knocked me unconscious one day. My father pushed the door open to push my body outside. He didn't know what the hell had happened.
Detected at your right side house.
Oh, well, thank you, Alexa. We'll make sure that.
Thanks, Alexa. So you were adopted?
I was adopted. My father wanted to buy, it was $4,000. My father wanted to get a car. And my mother said, we're getting a kid. And I was adopted from Coney Island Hospital on Ocean Parkway, right off the Belt Parkway there. The woman went into the hospital under my adopted mother's name because in those days, you didn't have to show ID to get into the hospital. Like, what's your name? Mrs. Parrish. Okay, fine, you know. And I had a really bad staph infection. It took me a week to get out of there. I almost died. And then handed me over to my mother and a little envelope with cash of $4,000. And that was it. Birth certificate said Mrs. Parrish, Manny Parrish, done deal. So I can't go back and find my real parents, but I heard it was like a lawyer and some girl in the office, and you know, and here I am, kind of situation, right? But it made it hard as a kid because I was my mother would come into my room and go, I was asleep. Manny, are you sleeping? I'm like, 1 o'clock in the morning. No, what's wrong? What's wrong? Oh, you're awake. And she would drag me out in my just underwear with no shirt on in the snow and throw me out and lock the door. And I don't know if you can see it. I have a scar somewhere over here on my hand punching through the glass because it's 12 degrees outside trying to get back in. Neighbors would come and put a blanket around me and cool down period and talk to my parents. And in those days, you didn't call the police. It just wasn't a thing that you would even think of. It's the crazy family. They're fighting again.
Right? Because the biggest fear we all had was when I get home, I'm going to get a bigger beating.
Yeah, well, that too. And ironically, I didn't act out. I mean, I was bad in school, but I never got in trouble. I was never arrested. I wasn't like robbing people, you know. Those issues, when they came out me, I didn't vent them in other ways. So also simultaneously, I'm very tall. I'm 6'3", 4, but I was like 6'1" or 6'2" in 5th or 6th grade. So my mother found online a doctor that was doing a growth study. Now, I can't say the name or the hospital, but turns out this guy was one of the biggest pedophiles in New York, over 1,000 victims. And my mother took me there and dropped me off, and he'd say, come back in an hour, go shopping, walk in the room and get undressed. And he'd take Polaroids of me naked and bend over and put your hand on your piche and spread your cheeks and then come sit on my lap, and he'd have an erection. And then we have to now we have to masturbate because I'm teaching you to be a man. And if you can't masturbate, I'm going to put a finger, you know where, to help you get off. And I remember one time I was bleeding and I took my underwear and I was afraid my mother was going to find out and I was going to get a beating for it, right? Because it was too bizarre. And I threw it in the neighbor's trash can. And this went on for 3 years. Don't you tell your mother. This is a closed study. This is very important. And then I couldn't, between my mother being schizophrenic, I'd be sitting at the kitchen table. She'd tip my chair over backwards and drag me into the bathroom. You cut holes in the bathroom tiles with my bobby pins, and then you color them in with black pencil to get back at me, and smash my head against the tile. And I dropped the floor just crying like, I can't, what am I going to do? I'm 12 years old. I can't get my own apartment. I can't run away from home. It's a big world out there. But at 14, I finally left. And it's a funny story how I left, but I wound up living with somebody who worked at the Continental Bath House in New York, which turned later into Plato's Retreat. He was 22 and I was 14, but I was tall and I lied that I was 18. I lied to everybody I was 18. And I followed him to work one day and he opens a black door and goes downstairs, and I open the door. The place is in black with a pin spot, like the old club. So it was a pin spot, and that's it, in the black room. And the security guard at the door, and it said like $10, which I didn't have. And he goes, well, you're going to pay. And I went up to him and went, hey, sailor, you know, like, I'll meet you later. You know what I mean? You know, see you later, kind of thing. And he let me in. And I walked downstairs. And if you ever see the movie The Ritz, it's not really like that, but there were palm trees and black lacquer floor with chrome glass and mirrors, a Bose sound system, triangle speakers, which had bass, which you never heard before, water sprinkling into the pool, guys walking around in towels. And I'm like, what? You know, it's like Dorothy and the Wizard of Oz. It goes from black and white to color. Like, what is this? And someone said, if you want to stay for the show, you should get a good seat. I said, show. And they put out these chairs, and we sat down, and this woman comes out, and she starts singing. She's at the second or third song, and the video is up on YouTube. Hi, I'm Bette Midler, and this is my drummer, blah, 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 and this is my piano player, Barry Manilow. And I got to see Bette Midler before she was Bette Midler like that. You know what I mean? She would sing, you know. And then I wound up leaving that situation. My mother found out where I lived. And I went into Central Park. And of course, where do I wind up? At the biggest gay cruising area in Central Park at 14 years old. And who's going to pick up a 14-year-old but a pedophile? I didn't know this. And I'm telling him my mother. And he goes, oh, you can come live with me. No hassle. You know what I mean? Well, the guy was nuts. Told me the space people were coming to take us away. We had to leave a bag packed underneath the bed. But then we'd go on little trips. And he'd take me to Philadelphia, to Washington, D.C., to Amherst, Massachusetts, out to Long Island. I think we went down to Virginia, upstate New York. And this guy was a part of a pedophile ring. And there would be another guy, you know, he was 32 and I was 14. And somehow or another, I thought, well, I'm probably gay. And this is what happens in gay culture. When you're in a bad situation, you try to make sense of it. You don't realize it's a pedophile. As a 14-year-old, you don't have the neurons literally in your brain. If you have kids or a niece or a nephew who have seen a 14-year-old, you can't put this together. But I thought, well, this is what gay people do to watch out for other gay people. And he's taking me under his wing. And
please search for part 2 of this podcast on the platform you're watching or listening to. And please do not forget to follow us.